Baker, Bigelow, Bloom, Bonilla, Bonta, Bro, Brown, Burke, Calderon, Campos, Chang, Chow, Chavez, David Chu, Canson Chu, Cooley, Cooper, DeBobney, Daly, Daly, Dodd, Eggman, Frazier, Gaines, Gallagher, Cristina Garcia, Eduardo Garcia, Gatto, Gibson, Gomez, Gonzalez, Gordon, Gray, Grove, Hadley, Harper, Hernandez, Holden, Irwin, Jones, Jones Sawyer, Kim, Lackey, Levine, Linder, Lopez, Lowe, Mainshine, Mathis, Mays, McCarty, Medina, Melendez, Mullen, Nazarian, Obernolte, O'Donnell, Olson, Patterson, Perea, Quirk, Rendon, Ridley Thomas, Rodriguez, Salas, Santiago, Steinorth, Stone, Thurmond, Ting, Wagner, Waldron, Weber, Wilk, Williams, Wood. Madam Speaker.
We have a quorum. I'd like to ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. Today's prayer will be offered by Father Constantine Papademos. Father Papademos.
Good morning. Let us pray. Lord, in heaven, your will is automatic. There are no opposing forces, no doubts or enemies, or anything that comes against your will. On earth, your will is done in our lives every day when we follow it in our thoughts, our words, and actions. Lord, let your will be done in our life, and help us to get into agreement with you in our heart. For when we stand against doubt and darkness and refuse those negative and self-defeating thoughts, we just might be able to see a glimpse of heaven in our life here on earth. Amen.
I'd like to ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber to please remain standing for the flag salute. Our flag salute today will be led by Assemblymember Bro.
Colleagues, if you'd place your hand over your heart, veterans may salute and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Tuesday, May 19, 2015. The Assembly met at 7 a.m. The Honorable Rocky Chavez.
Mr. Holden moves and Mr. Gallagher seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentation of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the Governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Moving now to motions and resolutions. For absences, we have 5 colleagues who are absent today. For legislative business, Mr. O'Donnell. For personal business, Assembly members Alejo, Olson, and Weber. And for illness, Assembly member Waldron. If we could now go to motions and resolutions. Mr. Holden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 118 and allow Assembly members McCarty to have guests and photographers on the floor today.
Without objection, that request is granted.
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 and allow Assembly members Bloom, Dolly, Medina, and Patterson to speak on adjourned memories today.
Without objection, that request is granted.
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 96 and withdraw AB 475 Bigelow from Rules Committee and place it on third reading file.
Without objection, such shall be the order.
At the request of the author and pursuant to Assembly Rule 78, please remove file item A1, ACR 23 Salas, from the inactive file.
We ask the clerk to note.
At the request of Mr. Meinschein, please remove file item 176, SB 182, Committee on Governance and Finance, from the consent calendar and place on the inactive file.
The clerk will so note.
At the request of Mr. Gallagher, please remove the following items from the consent calendar. File item 125, AB 1435 Alejo. File item 135, AB 575 Brown. File item 154, AB 1108 Lowe. And file item 157, AB 1194, Eggman.
The clerk will note.
Mr. Speaker, at the request, I request unanimous consent to suspend Joint Rule 62A, the file notice requirements, to allow the Appropriations Committee to hear SB 302 Laura on Wednesday, May 27, 2015 at 9 a.m. in room 4202.
Without objection, that should be the case.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Colleagues, at this time, we have several guest introductions. Let me first call on Mr. Gordon. Mr. Gordon, you're recognized.
Thank you. It's my honor and privilege today to welcome students and their teachers and parents from Fairwood Explorer Elementary School in my district, located in Sunnyvale, California. I believe that they're in the gallery from Fairwood Explorer Elementary, and if so, would they please stand so we can recognize them? Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to now recognize Mr. McCarty for your guest introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a great pleasure today to welcome the Lady Lions from McClatchy High School. They just recently won the high school girls state Division I championship. They're at Old Public High School right here in the heart of Sacramento. The first girls athletic team to win a state championship in the history of our Sacramento City Unified School District. They won in a sport that frankly has been dominated the last few years by non-public schools. So it's great to see a public school doing well. In their great championship game, they won 65-61 in double overtime to defeat the Lady Cavaliers from Gardenia's Junipero Serra High School. With us today are some of their players: Jada Fonseca, Kelsey Wong, Lauren Nubla, Shara Shimizu, Camry Donald, Christy Wong, Jordan Cruz, Their coach, also McClatchy alum, former star guard Jessica Kunisaki, and also here with us is their principal, Peter Lambert. Please join me in giving these great student athletes a round of applause and welcome to our state capitol.
Okay. Colleagues, that concludes our business. That concludes our motions and resolutions and our guest introductions for the day. Let's move on to business on the daily file. Second reading, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1521 and Assembly Bill 1275 with amendments.
All bills will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Moving to Assembly third read. Colleagues, since it has been a long week, ask if folks could please keep your conversations to a minimum as we move through what will be a long daily file today. File item 3, the motion is continued. Moving to the third reading. File item 4, AB 312, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 312 by Senator Jones and others, an act relating to advertising.
And thank you. I'm going to recognize Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, let's get the morning off to an exciting start and approve AB 312, which is the Made in America bill. The Assembly has shown leadership on this issue for the last 2 terms, and hopefully the Senate will join us in approving Made in America. Currently, there is an inconsistency between federal labeling and California laws for Made in America products. At the federal level, a product that is all or virtually all made in the United States is typically described as one in which all significant parts and processing that go into the product are of U.S. origin, or where there is only a negligible amount of foreign content. California, on the other hand, makes it unlawful for any person, firm, corporation, or association to sell or offer for sale merchandise that advertises itself as being made or manufactured in the United States when any article, unit, or part of the merchandise has been entirely or substantially made, manufactured, product outside of the United States. This inconsistency has resulted in difficulties for manufacturers because products legally labeled for sale in all other 49 states Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm just asking for the House's attention because this is a very important bill. It's important to our manufacturers. It's important to employees in California. It's important to taxpayers, and I hope that we'd all see it as important as well. All other 49 other states agree on the standard. California is the exception. Members, this bill marries California's policies with the rest of the country. I ask for your aye vote, and let's move California forward with manufacturing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. If I could please ask our guests and visitors in the back of the chamber if you could please keep your comments to a minimum. We have a lot of business today. Thank you. Mr. DeBobne.
So I just want to rise in support of this bill. This bill came through one of my committees. I really applaud the author for his efforts to improve the bill, to improve consumer protections within the bill, and also to improve some of the standards in which this will help make sure that our state is in line with not only the federal guidelines and regulations on this, but make sure that we're also keeping a high standard of labor in the state. We all want to see more manufacturing in our state. We all know the jobs that is created through manufacturing. This is a small but important measure to help local manufacturers in our state, small businesses, have more of a competitive advantage to make sure that their products are distinguished from those made overseas. So I want to applaud the offer, and I want to make sure that on the Democratic side of the aisle we show bipartisan support on this measure.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
I, too, rise in support of this measure. I want to thank my colleague from Santee for his hard work on this issue. Making sure that California products carry the same comparison label as occurs in other states, I think, is important for our businesses here. So, again, I thank my colleague for his work.
And Mr. Cooley.
In the same way, colleagues, I rise in support of this measure. Growing good jobs is vital to our state, our economy, our college graduates. This is a one piece to that end. I thank my colleague from Santee for his flexibility in working on this, but I think it's important to our jobs climate.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. Jones, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I thank you for your additional comments. As I said in my opening, the Assembly has shown leadership on this issue for the last 2 terms. I have committed to work with the new leadership in the Senate and co-authors in the Senate to make sure that we navigate this bill through the Senate and bring it back and get it to the governor's desk. I ask for your aye vote.
At this time, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. 44 ayes, 9 noes. The measure passes. We're going to pass and retain file items 5 through 7. File item 8, AJR 7. The clerk will read.
Assembly Joint Resolution 7 by Assemblyman Mathis and others, enacting to Veterans Business Enterprise.
Mr. Mathis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, AJR 7 calls upon Congress to amend the GI Bill of Rights to make benefits available for veterans to use as startup capital for small businesses. California is currently the home to more than 1.8 million veterans. California has the largest number of veterans than any other state. A lot of veterans transitioning out of the military choose to start businesses versus going to college. Members, AGR 7 just simply ask that for those who choose not to go to college, they use that money as startup capital for small businesses. I respectfully ask for your aye votes, and I'd like first roll to be open for co-authors.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, Mr. Mathis would like the first roll to be open for co-authors. The clerk will open the roll. Colleagues, this is for co-authors. The clerk will close the roll. There are 66 co-authors added. And for this item, we need to take a roll call vote. So with that, the clerk will open the roll on the roll call vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 66, no 0. The resolution is adopted. File items 10 and 11 will pass and retain. File item 12 for amendments AB 69. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 12 with amendments by Senator Rodriguez.
Actually, my apologies. I did call item 12. We'll go back to item 9, but why don't we stay on item 12 at this point? For amendments AB 69, Mr. Rodriguez, you are recognized. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 69 with amendments by Senator Rodriguez.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Mr. Speaker and members, AB 69 seeks to provide guidelines for developing and implementing policies and procedures for downloading and storing data from body-worn cameras. The 4 amendments clarified that recorded body camera data cannot be accessed or released for any unauthorized purposes, and that nothing in this section shall be interpreted to limit the public's right to access all recorded data under the Public Records Act. I respectfully ask that the bill go out to print and back on file.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, we can take a voice vote on these amendments. All those in favor of the amendments, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The bill is out to print and back on file. Let's go back to file item 9 for amendments AB 51. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 51 with amendments by Assemblymember Quirk.
Mr. Quirk, you may open.
Yes, the amendments for AB 51 are a response to the experienced motorcycle riders in appropriations and transportation who assured me that we could that motorcyclists could lane split at higher speeds safely than was currently allowed in my bill. The amendments are supported by a study from UC Berkeley which talk about the speeds at which lane splitting can be done safely. I request your aye vote on the amendments.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, we can take a voice vote on these amendments. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The bill is out to print and back on file. File items 13 through 15 will pass and retain. We are going to take up file item 16, AB 466. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 466 by Assemblymember McCarty, an act relating to state employment.
Mr. McCarty, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a cleanup from last year's 1214 by Anderson, which seeks to address job seekers who checked a box on state employment forms after entering into agreement with the state of California not to return to the state civil service system. Under current law, when an employer dismisses a civil service employee, the employee can appeal the decision to the state personnel board without having to go through the expense of a formal hearing. At these settlement conferences, a wide range of proposals can be made, including prohibiting the employee from seeking or accepting subsequent employment with their particular department or with the state as a whole. This bill simply clarifies that only applicants who have agreed to not seek or accept future employment with the state as a whole must check this box. Former employees who have entered into an agreement to no longer work for a particular department would still be eligible to work for a different state agency or department. In essence, this gives a minor change to state law, allowing state employees to have a second chance to find the right job for them. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 23. The measure passes. Going now to file item 17 for amendments AB 498. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 498 with amendments by Assemblymember Levine.
Mr. Levine, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 498 establishes a state policy to protect wildlife corridors. These amendments will remove all opposition to the bill. I respectfully ask for an aye vote on these amendments.
Mr. Gallagher.
No objection on amendments only.
I will assume that, Mr. Levine, that will be your close. And with that, we can take a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor of the amendments, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The bill is out to print and back on file. File items 18 through 22 will pass and retain. File item 23, AB 661. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 661 by Assemblymember Mathis, an act relating to local government.
Mr. Mathis, you may open.
Mr. Speaker, members, AB 661 provides cleanup language to promote uniformity, eliminate confusion, and ensure a smooth real estate transaction process for home buyers. Under existing law, counties can impose a $10 recording fee on certain real estate documents for the purposes of preventing real estate fraud crimes. AB 661 will clarify current law and enable consistent application of the real estate fraud fee in all of our 58 counties, reducing delays in recording documents and providing fairness and equity for homeowners. This bill is supported by the county records offices throughout the state and has no opposition. I request your aye votes.
Mr. Jones, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I know we're trying to get out of here quickly today, so I'll try to be quick. I have a question for the author, please.
Without objection.
Mr. Mathis, is this your first bill on the floor?
Indeed it is, so take your best shot.
You know what? I'm kind of confused about the language of the bill. I was reading through the language. I think there's about 4 pages of language, and the title of the bill says it's about real estate. But there's a lot of language in there about recording, instruments. There's an auditor, which is defined as one who listens. And then there's a part in there about CCR, which I don't know what Clearwater Creedence Revival has to do with this bill, or Creedence Clearwater Revival. So could you explain for the members of the Assembly, is this a music bill or a real estate bill?
Members, obviously this is a real estate bill, and I don't know how long ago it was that my colleague, Mr. Jones, bought his house, but I purchased mine about 2 years ago, and this process can be very confusing at times. So maybe he should go back and talk to his realtor and everybody and read through a few more things.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to ignore the accusations from my freshman colleague from the Central Valley, and still, as a licensed real estate agent myself, who has some understanding of the real estate laws and the things that he's trying to convince us to vote for, despite him trying to talk me out of voting for his bill, I'm going to vote aye.
Mr. Wilk, you're recognized.
Yes, I want to commend the author for this bill. I, too, am a big fan of CCR. And I have a question of the author.
Without objection.
I'd like to know what your favorite Creedence Clearwater Revival song is.
I might have to get a time machine to go back to hear that one. So I request for your aye votes.
Mr. Wagner, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All right, so this first bill, the author seems to be prepared, and he's willing to tangle with a real estate agent. So I got a question of the author. As I read through the bill, you're exempting out transfers subject to Section 11911 of the Revenue and Taxation Code. Please, sir, what exactly does Section 11911 of the Revenue and Taxation Code say that you're amending? Oh, question of the author.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Mr. Mathis, you could choose to answer that now or in your close.
Members will move forward for the close. Thank you.
On my own time, we are really looking forward to that close. And I hope you'll take a chance to look it up while you're being asked the question by the next speaker. Members, I've looked it up. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I don't want to spoil the close. But this is a good bill. I'd urge an aye vote.
Mr. Linder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question of the author?
Without objection.
Considering the dock stamps in each county are typically about $1.10 per thousand, the question that I have is, in the county that you live in, what are the dock stamps, and what is your favorite CCR song?
Mr. Mathis, you may answer that question or choose to address any of these matters in your close.
Members, as was requested earlier, I will move towards my close so that you can all catch your flights.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, this is the time, Mr. Mathis, for your close.
Members, I respectfully ask for your aye vote. All questions can be answered in my office later.
And with that, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Aye 69, no 0. The measure passes. File item 24, we will pass and retain. File item 25, AB 364, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 364 by Assemblymember Gibson, an act relating to gambling.
Mr. Gibson, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise regarding AB 364, simply adds the Belmont Derby invitation to the groups of stakes races in horse racing law, which are exempt from 50 races per day limit on important races. This is a historic and prestigious bill regarding horse racing, and it will also maintain a competitive advantage in California's history. It will increase wage handling and specific races that will increase the purse, the racetrack revenue, breeders' awards in the state of California. AB 364 passed out of committee by bipartisan support with no opposition. I request an aye vote.
Okay. Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Aye 66, no 0. The measure passes. File item 26, we will pass and retain. File item 27, AB 738, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 738 by Assemblymember Beth Gaines, enacting to public transit.
Assemblymember Gaines, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 738 would help provide a more updated and streamlined way for cities and counties to participate in RT services and amenities. AB 738 also creates an updated process for annexation and detachment of territory in RT. There's been unanimous bipartisan support for this bill. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Aye 68, noes 0. The measure passes.